Guard claiming that it has seized a British tanker in the region. Let's talk about housing. Sky-high home prices have Canadians seeking out affordable housing options, and that might include, say, a married couple moving in with the parents. But what rights do you have if you're living under, say, your in-laws' roof and then the marriage turns sour? Let's see if we can find out. We're joined now by Diana Isaac. She's associate lawyer at Shulman Law Firm. Good to see you again, Diana.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So this is interesting. We know that people are seeking out these different kind of options, and maybe you do find yourself living under your in-laws' roof. Now, heaven forbid, the relationship breaks down. Do you have any rights are you even a tenant in that situation?
Well, the multi-generational household is becoming a growing trend. And we notice that when people end up with this arrangement, the dispute usually arises when there's a misunderstanding of intention. So let's assume in this case that the parties are married. From the standpoint of the parents, the in-laws that are providing the shelter, if they're interested in not having some sort of right and having their children have some sort of interest in the home, then they're best served to have this documented by way of a rental agreement. And as it affects the children, the couple that are in that household, if their contributions such as, let's say, carrying costs that pertain to property taxes and mortgage, if they want that contribution to be deemed part of a form of compensation for the home, they probably also need to document the proof of what they're contributing, and between the spouses, they should have a marriage contract.
Okay, so it gets interesting, I guess, if it's become sort of a casual arrangement. God, we're struggling. We have to give up the apartment. Someone's lost a job. Can we just move in with you, mom and dad? And no contracts are drawn up. No discussions are had. I guess that's where it can get very murky.
Correct.
Because nothing's been established.
That's right. And these disputes usually end up being litigated, or it's a situation where we need to compile as much evidence to substantiate the intention. So it's incumbent and quite important for all parties involved to have this properly documented, or at least to speak to a lawyer to ensure that we flesh out basically the intention of what the arrangement is really.
Because I think of it in terms of home ownership, obviously somebody's name is on the title, but then often there are more than those people in the home. What kind of rights are there then? Like, someone might just say, well, wait a minute, this is my house. I don't know how you have any claim whatsoever. I bought this home, my name's on the title.
Right. So in situations where you can prove some sort of contribution financially or through your labor, there's a possibility that you may have an equitable or beneficial interest. So this is why it's important to stipulate and have it documented to properly obtain what your interest is, what the intention is, that do these contributions translate to some sort of interest financially to this home.
Now, I know that as Canadians seek out these sort of alternative arrangements, it wasn't quite the same situation, but I spoke with a young woman probably about a month or two ago where there's 4 or 5 adults who all own a home together. And to me, that seems it's great if everyone can live in that kind of harmony, but that must be fraught with legal challenges as well in terms of, I guess, people thinking, well, what is my stake in the home? Do I do more in the home? I guess it comes down to that, right? You said if someone felt like they put something into the house that bettered the home, that can get tricky.
Correct. And I think the more parties involved, the more convoluted it becomes to determine what the intention is and whether there's a conflicting misunderstanding of really what the intention is.
Do you anticipate as we move through this housing cycle? We know that the Toronto market, cooled off. The Vancouver market is still sort of mired in a slump, but prices are still out of reach for a lot of people. Are we going to see more and more of these arrangements where people are going to have to really think carefully about what their legal rights are and what kind of contracts they should be drawing up even before they enter them?
In my practice, I'm noticing that this is a growing trend, and I do agree that Vancouver and Toronto are leading the way in the path to contributing to this growing rate just because of the affordability of housing.
Is there a sense of even the scenario we laid at the top of the show is like a married couple, and then of course there's someone there who is not a family member, but what about kids who just never leave the house and they're living in the house, and at some point I guess there's a sense of entitlement as to, oh, I grew up here and this is sort of my house too. Is it really their house too?
I mean, I think it's in that situation, if they're not a married couple and it is a child, that becomes an issue of contribution and proving that. I mean, it's a different context, but I think it does muddle the lines. I do agree with figuring out what interest do they have, what do their contributions mean in terms of the value of the property, and are they going to obtain anything out of it?
Yeah, right now my kids are 16 and 14. I'll give them a bit of autonomy in their own bedrooms. The only contribution they're making so far is sometimes they unload or load the dishwasher. So I think I have a few years before I have to worry about them.
Nice.
All right, Diana, great to have you here as always.
Pleasure.
Diana Isaac is associate lawyer at Shulman Law Firm. Still to come, Canadian shoppers pull back on their spending in May. We'll take a closer look at that and where that leaves the Bank of Canada. Harbinger's David Prince joins us. That's next.